Okay, I'm here without Dio. Quorra, this pretty girl is Quorra. We'll see if we can get the see. These are Quorra's ears. This is Quorra and Dio's roadmap to success. Now, the guardians. One of the guardians is not at home. He is away for a while, and basically we were called in because Quorra has gone after Dio a few times when treats are involved. And the intensity level of the attacks, there's only been about, I believe, 6 or 8 of them over years, but they're getting more intense, and that's definitely not a good sign. Now, Quorra's guardian actually put her on, or the vet put her on Prozac, and it's had a good impact. Using drugs as part of a rehabilitation plan is something we like doing. A lot of people just go to their vet when their dog has a behavior problem. They just prescribe drugs, and that's not a great way to go about it. We want to give the dog have it be a part of a greater effort. Now, some dogs have a chemical imbalance and are so stressful or whatever that being on drugs for medication for a longer period of time can help them kind of feel more relaxed. In Quorra's case, Laura perception was that we need to increase her dose because going on Prozac to begin with, it's the lowest dose she could be on, had a good impact, but stopped the accidents and some other stuff. But there has been a fight since that. She showed a lot of signs of stress and anxiety while she was here, pacing, breathing heavy, her ears pinned back, not pinned back, but back, the way that she was opening her mouth, and all those things, and being sound sensitive that we addressed in the video above. So when you have a really stressed out dog, everything's going to be kind of amplified. So we would like to play around with the elements. I'm going to actually in the client's inbox should be an email already right now from the company that we like to refer to. They're veterinary behaviors that offer telephone consultants. It's called Insight. And so they do a couple $100, but then they kind of get your dog's medical records. They look at it, and they can kind of give you some more counsel. These people who use medication to help dogs' behavior. That's the mouth that Laura was talking about. The mouth is just really, really big. Okay, so we started off by talking about I guess one of the first things we talked about was reducing stress levels. Dio barks. He is a demand barker, and he's a beagle, and so it's kind of a bad combination. Beagles are great. Demand barking isn't great, but beagles who demand bark, it can be stressful. You have Quorra's already a stressed out dog, and then we add another dog that's in here. That might be part of the reason why she's gone after him, because when she's gone after him is when the husband of the unit here has left and is is out of town for work. And as a result of that, I think she might be overly stressed because he's here. She might also think that she needs to contribute, and she's going to contribute by keeping the pack in a balanced, calm way. And Dio probably says, well, but I'm the spoiled dog, and I'm in charge around here. Unfortunately, Dio is quite a bit smaller than she is, and also a little bit older. So we don't want dogs to sort things out on their own. Some things it's okay, but not when it comes to aggression, because they will take it too far, especially when you have stressed out dogs. And I think they're both stressed out for different reasons. So when you have a dog that's sound sensitive, and that's why we have the video above, a lot of us, we don't recognize that sometimes our energy, our communication methods, our body language can be overwhelming and stressful for a dog as well. So as a man, I'm a tall man, and often dogs are intimidated by tall men to begin with, or have a little bit more difficulty with them. Raising your voice for a sensitive dog can be really debilitating. In some cases, it could be almost as bad as striking the dog. And we just don't think about it that way because it's just, well, but I'm just saying no. But if the dog is overly sensitive and it's really stressed out, that can really that cut can go very deep. So one of the things I talk to the guardians about is making sure that we're kind of not correcting dogs in a harsh way. And the guardians, like I said, I'm only seeing one of them, but the guardian here said, no, we're loving the dogs and all that fun stuff. But sometimes, human nature, we do have a tendency to sometimes when we get stressed out, we lash out a little bit or use a louder voice than we'd like to. So if the guardians get a little bit frustrated about anything, I'd like them to go outside, go for a quick little walk, maybe take Dio out for a walk if we're frustrated at Quorra, or vice versa. And just try to release that. If you're going to go outside and yell, go outside without the dogs. But we all are pressure vessels. It's human to be frustrated when our dogs are, especially when we have dogs that are going after each other. That causes anybody to be stressful. But we want to try to, when we have a dog that has stress or anxiety problems, we want to peel back every layer of that onion that is contributing factor and try to help the dog get over it. And that's why the benefit of the video above, this helping the dog through counterconditioning will really help, because now we can strike things off the list that cause the dog stress and anxiety, and that helps the dog feel more secure. So we also talked about dog body language, and so that's a paw for attention. I'm not a big fan of teaching dogs to shake because I find that a lot of dogs will paw. Sometimes a paw on top of another dog could be a little bit of control or an inappropriate way of playing. And if you're petting your dog and it reaches out to you, some studies show that just means the dog wants to pet you back a little bit and say, I really like what you're doing. So just like anything else, it depends on the context of what's going on. So basically, I'm going to go over a little bit of dog body language. So licking the lips is a sign of stress. So if you see the dog suddenly licking its lips and it hasn't been eating, there's nothing on its face, that can be an indication of stress. What I like to do, and I talked to the guardian about doing this, is just kind of study the dog's neutral body mechanic. So you can see the tip of Quorra's ears here. So when she's nice and relaxed, what are her ears doing? Are they kind of here? And she's a Husky mix, and so her ears should be kind of up like this. If you start seeing the ears go back like this, that can be a sign of being stressed or uncomfortable. Being forward means it has my attention. It can also mean I'm a little bit challenging, things like that. So the idea is to spend a couple of days looking at the dog's ears in different situations so that you can kind of read the dog's body language. So you're like, okay, the ears here, that's normal. And then something else is going on, something new happened, you see the ears flip back, well then I'm going to be more aware of what's going on with the dog. One of the first things I do is look at the dog's body posture. Am I leaning this way, or leaning forward but have my feet out bracing me? Or am I leaning away and have a foot behind me? Those are all indications I'm not comfortable, so I'm getting ready to go in whatever direction I'm leaning. And so if you see a dog, normally the dog should be wiggly jiggly and their feet should be underneath them. That doesn't look stiff, that looks stiff there. So wiggly and jiggly with the feet underneath. And so if you see that leaning one way or the other, that's a big indicator. Also holding its breath or breathing heavy, which she has a tendency to do. Pacing seems to be one of her ways of communicating she's a little stressed. Now a good sound is this. That's a sign of relieving stress, or leaving the stress behind. So if you hear a big exhale, that's a wonderful thing. We should celebrate that. Yawns can also be an indication that I'm relieving stress as well. Sniffing the ground can be an indicator. So the idea, and also the tail. If you see the tail up and stiff, even if it's moving, that's not usually a good sign. If you see the tail down and it's like phallically tucked underneath, that's also not a good sign. That's more fear and anxiety. This is more territorial or potentially confrontational, or at least alerted. What we should see, if this is the dog's spine, my shoulders, you should see the tail kind of hanging down like this. She has a kind of a tail that does one of these things. But really, if it's wagging, what we'd love to see wagging here in the middle, so it's parallel with the spine. And so and there are books you can read, there are magazine articles you can read on how to read your dog's body language. But recognizing those sort of things, if you see that she's stressed and all of a sudden she starts, and staring, I forgot to mention, staring is one of the first things when there's going to be a conflict. It's the dog's kind of like this, and all of a sudden goes like, that's getting still and staring are not good things. So that's where we want to maybe throw some treats or something behind the dog. Be careful in this case because the dogs have gone after each other for treats, but maybe throw the squeaker ball or something along those lines. Now, before I forget, when I talk about passive training, I might not remember later, but I really want you to emphasize the yellow ducky, because that seems to be one of Quorra's favorite things. And if we can condition her to go pick up that duck when we see the signs of stress that I just got done talking about, we start seeing those, and we can condition her to go over, hello sweetheart, and go over and pick up the yellow ducky. She might squeeze it a little bit. That might be a way to release some stress. It also occupies, yes, you're taking advantage of me doing a video. It helps her. Some dogs, it's like almost like a binky. And also it neutralizes her mouth. She can't attack the other dog if it's got it in her mouth. Now she can drop it, I'm not saying that that's not the case, but giving her a replacement behavior and teaching her to do it. So every time she brings you the ducky, I want you to try to drop what you're doing and really give her attention, but try to say the word of the duck right before she picks it up or right before she brings it to you. And again, call it Oregon or whatever you want to call the ducky, Daffy or whatever. But that's, if you start seeing these signs of stress and you direct her to go get that, she does that, you got her to move away from this situation, and she grabs something and helps her feel a little bit more relaxed. And again, I think the upping of the dosage is going to help with that relaxation as well. We don't want a drugged out dog, but we want a dog that is equipped to handle the situation. And that's what we're looking for with the drugs. It's not to deaden things. It's to help the dog get better. All right, so let me see. We also talked about stimulation. So I think these dogs, older dogs, they maybe 1 or 2 walks a day. I'd like to see them getting a walk in the morning before the guardian goes to work. I'd also like to see another walk when the guardian comes home from work. And because once we've worked, we come and we sit down, it's harder for us to get up and take them for a walk again. They don't need a lot of walks, but letting them sniff, and the guardian knows that letting them sniff burns more energy on walking than walking, which is great. I also would love to see the guardian just look for DIY dog enrichment. You can Google it. There's a whole bunch of things out there. There's toys like the Omega Paw treat ball that I showed you, filling Kongs up with peanut butter, freezing those, and putting them downstairs. The dogs are separated during the day because they've gotten into some fights. And so if Dio's downstairs, give him a Kong, give him some other puzzles that he can figure out and get treats out of. He's probably going to sleep most of the day, but if he does get bored, it gives him things to do. And that mental stimulation is very, very important for older dogs. It keeps them more alert, helps them live a little bit longer. So I'd also have some for Quorra. I would go get a bunch of them. Go to Amazon or Chewy; it's the cheapest place to get them. And then basically start swapping them. Maybe one day we leave a Kong and a Rubik's Cube puzzle and a swinging thing downstairs, and we have a couple different the saucer, the Omega Paw treat ball, and something else upstairs. So coming up with these sort of things helps the dogs drain energy and keep them mentally occupied. Another good one is scent games. You can also Google that. There's a whole bunch of variants of it. It's really just hiding treats around the house in fun ways, and the dog has to actually go and find those treats. They're using their nose, which drains a lot of energy and helps them feel a little bit more accomplished when they find their treasure, because they found the treasure themselves. Somebody to just hand me treats, so I have a boost of self-esteem. Dogs do have self-esteem. A lot of times we try to do everything for them to prove to them how much we love them, and we rob them of any potential to assimilate new skills. When I learn something new, I sit a little taller, my chin goes up, I feel better about myself. Same thing for dogs. And although we mean to love them when we do all these things for them, sometimes we actually handicap them a little bit. So getting the dog to figure things out and do problem solving and figure out how to get treats out of these toys are great ways to do that. I'd also recommend that dogs both get a snuffle mat, and we start feeding them with a snuffle mat. Now, Dio is a demand barker, and that's why the petting with a purpose, which we'll talk about in a minute, is going to be so profoundly important for him. But since he barks as soon as the guardian starts preparing her food, I was going to do a video on that, but I think the counterconditioning is more effective. So what I would do is I would put him outside, load up the snuffle mats, and if you go to Amazon, just search your snuffle mat, that gray one that I showed you in the video is usually the first one that comes up. They're about $35 a piece. Maybe they'll be cheaper on Black Friday. But get a good one. I've seen people that get one that looks like it's balding, and the dog just gets all the treat. The whole point is I have to work for my food. So that'll make, that's great stimulation. That's a great way because you're going to feed them twice a day anyways. So it's a nice way to add in a little extra exercise and mental stimulation. But look up other, try to get yourself a good 6 to 10 puzzles and toys. Some of them have little crevices you put treats in and stuff like that. Now, if it's too tough, so a lot of times they have a hole and there's like a tab on each side that kind of makes the hole, so it keeps the treats from just pouring out. Well, sometimes if it's so difficult, the dog just says, screw it, I'm not interested, well, they're not going to go to the toy. So that's the case. Sometimes I'll pull one of those tabs or two of those tabs out initially, and that kind of makes that a training toy. But then once the dog figures it out, then you can get another one and leave the tabs up there. They have to work harder for the food. Okay, so that's exercise and stimulation. We also talked about the importance of rules. Now, a lot of us, because these dogs have had some issues over food, I would like them to not be around the humans when they're eating food or around each other. Well, I guess they can be around each other, so that's fine. But we're preparing food and eating food, because that's just a recipe for disaster. Now, I did notice that when Quorra went in the kitchen, Laura and I both saw that she went in there and she got stiff and uncomfortable when she went through that threshold. And so I mentioned the guardian. She said, well, we've been trying to keep them out of there. Sometimes we use techniques that are a little bit, we don't really see it that way, but that come across the dog is too much. We stomp at the dog, or we rush towards them, or push them out of their room, or we yell at them to get out of the room. All those things can be really disconcerting for dogs. So what I prefer to do instead is I would go, and again, I talked about this off camera, do this without preparing food and have the other dog away. So what I would do is I would probably have you can do it either way. I would either have Dio go to a dog bed that's next to the fireplace in the kitchen room, and have Quorra out here, or vice versa. But I would pick one and have them consistently do that. So let's say we're going to do Quorra with her dog bed. It's here right by the bed, by the door. So what I would do is I would, without cooking anything, go in there with a whole bunch of treats, show her I have one, and throw it onto the dog bed. She runs over to get it. Now remember the order of saying things. We want the word to precede the action to be followed by the reward, the reinforcer. So for this example, I'm going to throw the treat into the dog bed to lure the dog to go there. When the dog is walking there, when the dog is about a half second away from licking up the treat, I'm going to say the name of the dog bed. Then the dog licks up the treat, while then arrives in the dog bed, and then it gets the treat. So that means the command word will lead me to getting the reward, and the action is the meat in the sandwich. So what I would do is I would throw it on the dog bed, the dog runs over to get it, and right before it licks it up, I say Fiji, if that's the word I'm going to use. And then it gets it, and it's going to get up and start coming back towards me. Once it vacates the bed, the dog bed, I throw another treat right away. Don't let it go too far away. So the dog should see you doing this. And you'll probably do this for anywhere about 15 to 30 treats before the dog just kind of sits or lingers at the dog bed. That's what we're looking for. And again, we're not doing this with any food in the kitchen. We're not preparing anything. The other dog's not around, so there's nothing to compete for. I'm just getting conditioned enough to go to the dog bed to get treats. So the first way I do is I throw those treats, like I said. Then what I do is when the dog, maybe Quorra turns and looks this way, I would throw another dog treat quietly. So it's there on the dog bed. And then she looks at the dog bed again. Holy cow, there's another treat. She goes back there and gets it. We say the word right before she licks it up. We can also lead her there and put her into a sit or a down position and then pop the treat in her mouth. So these are 3 ways to entice her to go to the dog bed. I guess I've been pantomiming this way. The next step is we're going to do that, and then when she, let's say she goes there on her own, we're just watching TV, we're not in the cooking in the kitchen, she goes to the dog bed, then we would throw treats. Or if we're in the kitchen, we throw treats. So now when I go to the dog bed, it rains treats. Why wouldn't I stay in the dog bed all day? This is the best place to be. I'm in the kitchen. The humans never give me food in the kitchen. But there's a lot of delicious treats on the dog bed. And so we've assigned a marker, so then later on we can say Fiji, and then the dog goes out to the dog bed, then we pay the dog after the fact. So now we've conditioned the dogs to go to the places without, and I would do this with both dogs separately, until eventually you say Fiji and the dog goes here, and then whatever his name is, Dio's name is, maybe call it stage or whatever we want to say. And eventually you want to be able to say, and you could probably say the same command word for both of them because they're going to different locations the way that we're teaching it. And so what I would do is, so I say Fiji, and then Quorra goes to the dog bed in the living room, and Dio goes to the dog bed by the stage. They've separated themselves from each other, and then you get to do your cooking without them being in there. And also not allow the dogs to be with near the humans who are eating, but the guardians have already done a good job of that. We also talked about premax. Premax are basically, it's a principle. It means if I do a less desirable behavior for me, it'll earn me a more desirable behavior. So a good example of this would be you go to the door and tell the dog to sit. If the dog, now dogs learn through repetition, consistency, and good timing. You have 2 seconds to correct or reward a dog. So I go to the door and I tell the dog to sit. If it doesn't sit, and I repeat the word sit over and over again, I'm going to condition and train the dog to not listen to my commands. And I'm also going to make sure that they don't listen for the word sit because I say it over and over and over again, which is why we only say it once. Now, I'm adding an extra delay on this. It's not technically a part of a premac, but this is how I get around with repeating the word over and over. So I go to the door and I say sit 1 time. If the dog sits within 2 seconds, I open the door and let them out. That becomes the reward. If they don't sit within 2 seconds, I walk away and I sit down somewhere nearby and I wait for 1 minute. Then I stand up and I go back to the door and tell the dog to sit. If it doesn't sit within 2 seconds this time, I walk away. This time I sit down for 2 minutes. Next time I sit down for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. I keep double length of time until eventually when I say sit, the butt hits the ground and the door opens up. Sorry, Quorra. She doesn't like that sound either. So remember for the sounds, I think I talked about in the video above, but make a list of those sounds and just keep on practicing that. And also when you're doing that, I forgot to mention this, don't practice the sound in the same place. Practice that same sound all over your house so that eventually, no matter where a book drops, I don't really care as Quorra, or I'm going to look up saying who's going to hook me up with a treat. Okay, so let me see. You do a premac for the door. I would probably start out with the door outside, with the dogs outside, because that's where their motivation, they want to come inside. But I also do want to put the dog on a leash before I would do a premac. One of the dogs likes to snuggle with one of the guardians. Well, if you want to snuggle with me, sit first. If you sit, then I'll invite you up. If you don't sit, no snuggles. And it's not like no snuggles, you're not getting any snuggles. It's just sit. Oh, wonderful, come and join me. Sit, you don't want to sit? Okay, I'm just going to go back watching TV. There's no punishment. There's nothing negative. We're not going to punish dogs. Dogs don't learn from punishment. All punishment or raising your voice or doing any of these things, all it's going to do is damage the dog's relationship with you. These dogs are both stressed. So it's going to be really, really compounded here. So luckily the guardian here, she seems very soft-spoken and really wants to do all the right things. But when you have guests or anybody else that comes in the house, it's going to be really important that they are mindful of not doing anything. There were a couple times I raised my voice. It startled Quorra. And so it's going to be the way for anybody else. So we want to make sure that everybody's nice and calm and quiet. Also, if you have guests come over and they want to go to the bathroom or do something, I would have them cough get Quorra to look at them, and then they stand up and walk away. If she sees us off guard and catch her by surprise, that'll really spook her. Eventually, as her confidence gets older, that won't be the case. But right now, just make sure you cough or even say her name. If she's right here next to you, she also she felt trapped a couple times. So if she seems like she can't get past somewhere, throw a treat to the open area. Help her go over there. And so if the guest is doing it, maybe the guest throws treats over there and then she goes over there, then I get up and I go to the bathroom. And so I achieve that. But if I get up and have to squirt by her, that's going to make her feel all sorts of nervous. Okay, so you can do a pre-mac for getting on the couch, spooning with me, putting my dog food down, although I probably wouldn't do it for Dio, attaching the leash, opening the door. There's a whole bunch of versions of that. So don't be afraid to do that. The more you do that, the more the dog starts to see you acting like a leader and has more respect and confidence in your leader. That makes them less anxious and nervous about other things. So it's kind of the opposite of what we think about rules, but it really, really will help. We also talked about petting with structure, petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is basically what it is. It's petting your dog for a reason. So right now the dogs come up and nudge their guardian, and the guardian pets them. So that's the kind of the conversation the dogs are used to. I tell you what to do and you do it. Well, and we mean the best when we're petting them that way, but at the same time, it confuses the dog into thinking it has more rank or status than us. But then when it tells us what to do or not to do and we do it anyways, that can stress out the dog. So the more the dog respects you as a leader, the more comfortable they're going to be. So the dog comes up and nudges you or barks at you, you tell the dog to sit, especially Dio, because he's a demand barker. If he demand barks, I would say sit once. And if he doesn't sit, I would lean back and I would kind of do what I'm doing. I don't really like doing this, and so you want to try to do this at the end. But if he continues barking, I would get up and leave the room. Now, part of the barking might be a lack of stimulation. So before I get up and leave the room, if he barks at me, I might try to do something to distract him, and then I might try to show him a puzzle or get him to do something. He might be saying, I'm barking at you because I'm bored. But if I try those things and it doesn't work, then I can do what's called a negative punishment, which is to leave the room. Now, this is not something you should do right away. You want to get to it. You want to try other options first. But what he's saying is, I want you to pet me. I want you to give me attention. You're not listening to me, so I want to bark to get that attention because it usually works. Well, it has to stop working, number one. Yes, look at you who came over for some attention. So don't pet when he barks or even look at him or give him any interaction. Just give him something else to do. And if he continues barking, then you can get up and leave the room and close the door behind you. So now you're saying, when you bark at me, it causes me to leave. Again, I don't like doing that a lot, but it can be a powerful way to reward. So if you tell the dog to sit and it sits, pet him under the chin or in that oval area right here that I mentioned, but don't reach over the head. Try to make sure nobody pets either dog over the head. If the dog does not sit, playing hard to get works great for dog training. So if the dog doesn't sit, then you just show the dog, I'm doing something else. I'm going to read, peace talks, or I'm going to watch TV, or I'm going to check my emails on my phone, or whatever it is. Show your dog you're living your best life. I'm not mad at you, but you're not getting the attention from me. After a while, that motivates the dog to want to listen to you and want to offer those things. So you're telling the dog to sit. If it's already sitting here, tell it to sit here, or tell it to lie down. If it does, then you pet it. If it doesn't, that was a great pre-mac right there. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't get the attention, but no punishment. After a while, the dog will start recognizing this and say, if I want attention now, I have to sit to earn it. And the dog will come and sit in front of you to ask for it. And babe, boy, you better start petting the dog when it does that. Use the watchword of paycheck. So once the other partner comes back home, if one of you walks in the room and sees you're petting one of the dogs and the dog's standing, you assume the person forgot to pet with a purpose. So you say paycheck, that person stops petting, even if they did it right. Tell the dog to sit. If it sits, they pet under the chin, and then they say, actually, I must, you missed it, but thanks for reminding me. So it's a gentle reminder. Now, we also talked about passive training, which is basically celebrating the things the dog does that we want. I love the look that you're giving me right now, although it's really not it's actually more of a stress look, but it looks good from a non-trained eye. She's just basically kind of panting up on the couch and staring at me, but her mouth is overly wide and her ears are pinned back and her pupils are dilated. So now she stopped breathing. She laid her chin on the ground. Her ears are still a little bit back, but her breathing slowed down, so I can tell that she is more relaxed and comfortable. All right, so passive training is celebrating things the dog does that we want. So every time she's coming to you, when she's a foot away, say the word come, then reach out and pet her. And after she arrives, you reach out and pet her. She's about to sit, right before her butt's to the ground, say sit, and then pet her. Every time she's about to lay down, same thing. When she goes to the dog bed, Fiji, or whatever it's called. This dog's face is Quest, that I'm wearing today, and then I have two other dogs, and each one of my dogs has its own unique word to eat. The way I assign that is Quest, his word is feast. So every time right before he takes his first bite of food for 3 months, I said feast, and then he started eating. So I can say feast, and then he goes and eats. So that's a nice way to help the dog have a better vocabulary. I would name all of your toys, give each dog a unique, distinctive name. I would also, you're going to give the same name to both dog beds, or you can the way that I described it, but be careful when you're doing that one of them doesn't get confused and go to the other one. So when you're practicing, make sure they're separated so I don't go to the wrong dog bed. But most of the time you can use the same command word for both dogs. Remember how you pronounce it matters. They hear pronunciation, so however you want to say it is fine. Just say it consistently. And I would try to avoid big booming voices or loud yelling voices. I think that's going to be startling and off-putting for the dogs. Let me see. So every time your dog poops, say business or whatever your word is for that. Every time it drinks water, say, what's your favorite alcoholic beverage? What's your favorite cocktail? Wine. So maybe you call it Merlot. Every time the dog goes drinks, you say, or Chablis, or Chardonnay. So every time the dog drinks, you say Chardonnay, and then like your dog looks like it's hot, you say Chardonnay. The dog goes over and takes a drink of water, and your friends are like, "Did you really give your dog Chardonnay?" Well, I have a very sophisticated dog. Sometimes in the evening they like to have a little Chardonnay. But no, we're not giving our dogs alcohol. That's bad. But we're coming up with something fun, and that's something I want the guardians here to do. Is anytime they introduce a new command, I'd like it to be a funny command word. If I want my dog to do what I want to say Chloe. Quorra. God, I'm having a bad day with names. But if I want my dog to do what Quorra's doing right now is lay down, I don't say lay down, I say crash. And my dog's flopped down on the ground. And the guardian just smiled, and that's why I like doing it, because the dog can read facial expressions. So since you already have some tension here, let's come up with some funny command words when you're naming the different things. So that way you say, Chablis or Chardonnay or whatever it is. And those things make the dogs kind of, when the dog spoons with you. For Dio, when he comes up, when you do invite him up to spoon, I would, right before he gets there, say spoons, and then pet him a little bit. And eventually, he heard that, he's barking. And eventually you could say spoons, and he comes up and snuggles up with you. You create a command word for it. So don't be afraid to just do it for commands or tricks. Do it for all sorts of stuff. On the couch, call this platform or runway. Well, not runway, but something that's kind of staged, maybe be a funny one. All right, so let me see, some real quick dog psychology. Remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're specifically rewarding. So if you pet a dog for jumping up, you're telling the dog, I want you to jump up to ask me for attention. That's not what we intend. If you pet a dog for barking, I bark and I get attention. This also works for good things, like we said, for petting with the purpose of passive training. Good attention and bad attention from a human are pretty much the same thing. So if you're yelling at the dog to chastise them or to stop them from barking, you're actually doing the opposite of what you're intending to do. So if the dog's barking, you could do the negative punishment, but I would look more for doing something to redirect the dog's attention. But if it barks, definitely don't pet it for barking, because that's kind of where this whole thing came from. Let me see. Anything the dog does in your presence that you don't disagree with is looked at as your seal of approval. And this is important because dogs go through life probing to see what they can get to, and they're expecting the leaders to say, you're not allowed to cross that line. But I'm going to come back again and try it again. Oh, you disagreed? I'm going to try it over here. Okay, I'm going to try it over here. I'm going to try it over here. And we look at that as the dog's being defiant. The dog is just doing its homework. So our inconsistency is one of the chief causes of stress in dogs, and confusion. And that confusion leads to stress as well. So more consistent can be the better. I'm trying to think, is there anything else you want me to go over? So what I'd like you to do is you should have an inbox, like I said, those beds. Talk to the consultant. If you don't want to do it, that's totally fine. We'll still continue working with you, but just for what you guys have going on, it might be a resource that might be helpful. Based on how stressed out the dogs are, I think we need to come back for a repeat visit or two. Let us know, because our initial visit, we do this 3-hour visit, and for most dogs, nuisance behaviors, that's all they need. We have dogs that have multiple issues that need to come back. We work with you on the price because we realize money doesn't grow on trees. And so, but I would like to help, in that touch game. I guess the last thing I want to go over. So the touch game, remember, one other last thing. So when the other guardian comes back, I want you to play a game. The very first thing you should do is the good game. And the good game is super simple. So he says good and gives the dog a treat. And then he takes 3 steps away and says good and give the dog another treat. So good is like your indicator. That was the behavior I wanted. So if you're trying to tell the dog to sit, when a butt hits the ground, you say good, and then you give it a treat. Now, I do that as a placeholder, and that's usually my bridge to come up with a command word. But like for the touch game, what we were doing, and before I get to that, for the priming the good, I'd like him to do that with maybe about 15, 20 treats, the first day he gets home and the second day he gets home. After that, probably won't have to do it anymore. Probably really doesn't, and that's just a nice way to get him synced up into the equation. Now for the touch game, the way we do it, I'm going to have this be the dog's nose and this is what it's touching. So again, you flash your hand. Dogs' eyes are very attractive movement, so don't go, that's not going to be a fat, boom. And if the dog's head is here, we want it to flash on this side or this side, and try and don't cheat, because the guardian at first went like this, and then dog turned a little bit, she went and she touched the dog. The dog has to do the work. So basically, you chop your hand and then just wait for the dog to do it. If it doesn't go within about 10, 15 seconds, I might pull back and chop closer, but also make sure there's not a lot of distractions in your environment. Now, if this is, so let's say I chop, and the dog, so here's the dog's head, I chop, the dog turns his head, good. So you want to say good when the nose touches. Then I can reach in my pouch and give the dog a treat, and that would be the reward. Now, the way to assign the command word for it is once the dog, you want to do this, and Laura's already done this with him, with her, but you want to kind of manipulate so the dog kind of knows what to do. So Laura did it a bunch of times before. Then she started saying touch, good, treat. So that's the order. So you say touch, as you flash your hand, the dog touches his head, you say good, then you pull out a treat and you give the dog the reward for doing it. The progression we usually go through in puppy class is the progression should be first turn, then lean, then step, then multiple steps. In puppy class, we expect within a week that you can go like this, the dog runs from across the room and sticks its nose right there. So it's a great way to get the dog engaging. It's a nice way to move around. If she starts staring at Dio, touch. She might turn around. Now, if you teach Dio this command, I would teach him maybe use the word target or boop. Come up with a different word. So you don't want to say touch and then try to get her to come over here and then have him come over here and there's a treat involved. That might turn out to be a fight. Now, remember, if there is a fight, throwing water on them is a good thing to do. I can't remember what Laura called it, the pig board or whatever that you can insert between them. Just try not to pull them away if she's latched on, because that can actually tear and rip things open. But a lot of times you get something in their mouth that will help them open their jaws. But really what we want to do is just maintain it so that hopefully the dogs don't get into that situation they need it. I think upping her dog's drugs or her medication, I can't say drugs, but also helping him be less demand barking. That demand barking is really stressful. And so I think that's a big contributing factor. And if we can help him be more relaxed, that's going to have a profound impact on her. The last thing I want to talk about is training. Go to YouTube, look for some easy, you talked about how it was quick and easy to train both dogs. Go to YouTube, try to find some easy tricks. Laura talked about teaching the one dog to go in between her legs. That's a trick. She calls it under. And so coming up with these new tricks and commands boosts dogs' self-esteem. The more confident dogs are, the less reactive they're going to be. So if you can get those dogs, maybe teach them some new tricks and commands, just pick one a week and practice a lot. You want to come inside, circle. You want to go outside, circle. You want to fed, circle. Whatever it is. After a while, you just look at the dog, it circles. Then you can go to the next one, bang your head, or whatever they are. But just like us, when we have more skills, we have more confidence. All right, Quorra. Well, I'm not going to disturb her. She's on the couch. But this is Quorra and Dio's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.